There is a shadow burned into the wall of a building in Hiroshima. Not a painting, not a memorial engraving. A human being. Vaporized so instantly that the heat flash scorched their exact outline into the stone, and then they were simply gone. The textbooks say those people died from the bomb. That's not what actually happened. A ship that killed 75% of its third-class passengers, not because a crew member locked a gate, because the ship itself was architecturally designed to kill them. A plague that the United States government actively concealed from the public on American soil for 2 years to protect trade revenue. Bodies in Pompeii, frozen in poses of agony, except a peer-reviewed forensic study proved they were already dead before those poses were possible. And one man, one Soviet military officer, on September 26, 1983, looking at a screen showing 5 incoming American nuclear missiles, decided not to press the button. He was right. The USSR classified it for 15 years. He died almost completely unknown. 5 events, 5 stories you believe you know. Every single one completely wrong. In the next 24 minutes, I'm going to show you what actually happened. Not the movie version, not the museum version. The version buried in academic journals, declassified government documents, and forensic reports. That changes everything you thought you knew about history. April 14th, 1912, 11:40 p.m. The Titanic has just struck the iceberg. And somewhere deep below the waterline, in the third-class cabins, something is happening that James Cameron decided not to show you. Not the locked gates. The real story is far more disturbing than a villain with a key. At 12:30 a.m., the order is finally given to evacuate third-class passengers. The first lifeboat launches at 12:40. 10 minutes. 10 minutes to navigate a ship that was specifically designed to be a maze for poor people. The RMS Titanic's lower decks weren't just passenger accommodations. They were a legal compliance structure. British immigration law at the time required third-class passengers to be physically separated from first and second class to prevent disease transmission when arriving at American ports. The same barriers designed to protect wealthy passengers from poor immigrants in peacetime became a death sentence on April 15, 1912. Survivor Daniel Buckley testified before the United States Senate inquiry. He said a sailor locked a gate directly in his face as he tried to reach the upper decks. He tore the lock off himself. But most third-class passengers didn't know which direction to run. Some had never been above E-deck. They literally didn't know where the lifeboats were. The British Board of Trade inquiry found no evidence of systematic, deliberate gate locking. What they found was worse. An architecture of separation that functioned on the night of April 14th as an architecture of death. Here's the data, uncontested from the official British inquiry. 75% of third-class passengers died that night. 39% of first-class passengers died. Not because someone locked a gate. Because the entire system, the legal structure, the physical layout, the architecture was never designed for them to survive. James Cameron gave us a villain, a man with a key. History gave us something far harder to face. A system so efficient at killing the poor that it didn't need a villain at all. What I'm about to tell you about the Black Death, most historians will not say out loud, because it never ended. 1347, the Black Death arrives in Europe. You know this story. A third of the continent dies. By 1353, it's over. Except it wasn't. The plague returned in 1361, again in 1369, again in 1374, again in 1390, again in 1400. Medieval Europeans didn't live through one pandemic and recover. They lived inside a plague that never fully left. Europe's population, devastated by the mid-1300s, did not recover to pre-plague levels until the 1500s. 150 years. A century and a half of a continent that never fully healed. And then, centuries later, it came back. 1855, China's Yunnan province, the third pandemic of bubonic plague. It spread across the world, and it didn't officially end until 1960. And here's the part the United States government actively hid from its own citizens. 1900, San Francisco, California. Bubonic plague. A Chinese immigrant named Wong Chut King dies in the basement of the Globe Hotel in Chinatown. Public health officials identify it immediately as plague. And then, silence. California Governor Henry Gage personally worked to suppress the information. Railroad companies, shipping companies, the California business lobby, all of them pressured officials to publicly deny the outbreak was real. They were afraid that a quarantine would hurt trade. The federal government concealed it for 2 full years, during which time the plague spread. Here's what your history teacher never told you. Yersinia pestis, the bacterium responsible for the Black Death, still exists in the soil of the American Southwest right now. The CDC registers approximately 7 human cases of plague per year in the United States. New Mexico, Arizona, Colorado. Primarily from contact with infected rodents, the Black Death never ended. We simply got better at managing what we cannot eliminate. Before we get to Pompeii, and I want you to prepare yourself, because what forensic scientists actually discovered about how those people died is something no tour guide in Italy will ever tell you. If you've made it this far and none of this matched what you learned in school, you're exactly who this channel was built for. Subscribe, because what comes next, Pompeii, Hiroshima, and especially the last one, the last story is the one that will stay with you. For 2,000 years, we believed we understood exactly how those people in Pompeii died. A peer-reviewed study in one of the world's leading scientific journals proved every word of it false. August 24th, 79 AD. Mount Vesuvius erupts. Every documentary, every museum exhibit, every school textbook says the same thing. The people of Pompeii were buried under volcanic ash and suffocated. This is false. In 2010, a team of researchers published findings in the journal PLOS ONE. They performed detailed forensic analysis on skeletal remains recovered from within the plaster casts. What they found overturned 2,000 years of accepted history. The people of Pompeii were not suffocating when they died. They were dead before any of that was possible. At approximately 1 a.m. on August 25th, a pyroclastic surge, a superheated cloud of gas, ash, and volcanic debris, hit Pompeii at temperatures between 250 and 300 degrees Celsius. 482 to 572 degrees Fahrenheit. The human body cannot survive exposure to that temperature. Not for seconds, not for fractions of a second. The contorted, agonized poses you see in every photograph of Pompeii, they were not dying in agony. The researchers call it cadaveric spasm, the violent, involuntary muscular contraction that occurs when a body is exposed to extreme, instantaneous heat. They were already dead before their muscles froze in those positions. 14 kilometers away, in the city of Herculaneum, temperatures reached 500 degrees Celsius, 932 degrees Fahrenheit. At those temperatures, blood boils inside living tissue. Skulls fracture. Researchers recovered skulls in Herculaneum with evidence of internal thermal pressure. Cranial vaults fractured outward from the inside. The lead researcher on the +1 study made one statement that appears in no guidebook. He said, "Everything written in guides and told to tourists is false." The story we've told about Pompeii for 2,000 years was a comfortable version of something we didn't fully understand. The truth is simultaneously more merciful and far more terrifying. What you're about to hear about Hiroshima has never appeared in any Hollywood film, because one man survived both bombings, both of them, and almost no one knows his name. August 6, 1945, 8:15 a.m., Hiroshima. Little boy detonates at approximately 1,900 feet above the city center. Within a mile of the epicenter, there were no bodies to count. Not because the blast scattered them, because they were vaporized. What remained wasn't a body. What remained was a shadow. The thermal flash, hotter than the surface of the sun, bleached the stone around a human being, and then that human being ceased to exist. Only the outline remained, burned into the stone steps of Sumitomo Bank, where it remains today. Akiko Takakura survived at 300 meters from ground zero. 300 meters.
0%
At
survival
that distance,
probability.
survival was considered statistically impossible by every model we had. She described a flash so bright she could see the bones in her own hands, like looking at an X-ray of yourself. She lived. Science still cannot fully explain why. But here's the story historians almost never tell. His name was Tsutomu Yamaguchi. On August 6, 1945, he was in Hiroshima on a business trip, less than 2 miles from the epicenter when little boy detonated. He survived. With ruptured eardrums, temporary blindness, and severe burns across his upper body, he returned home to Nagasaki. 3 days later, August 9th, he was in his supervisor's office, describing what he had witnessed in Hiroshima when Fat Man detonated directly above them. Tsutomu Yamaguchi survived both atomic bombings. He lived to the age of 93. He died on January 4th, 2010, the last officially recognized survivor of both bombs. The Japanese government only officially recognized his dual survivor status in 2009, 1 year before he died. Science still cannot fully explain why certain individuals survived at distances where every model predicted zero survival. Some questions about what happened in Hiroshima we still don't have answers to. The last story is about a man who saved the world, and whose name you have almost certainly never heard until right now. September 26, 1983. Serpukov 15, a classified Soviet missile early warning facility south of Moscow. Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Petrov is the duty officer tonight. It is 12:14 a.m. The alarm goes off. The Soviet early warning satellite system detects 5 intercontinental ballistic missiles launched from the United States. Protocol is unambiguous. Petrov must immediately report an attack to his superiors, who would escalate to the Kremlin, who would authorize a retaliatory nuclear strike within minutes. He had roughly the same amount of time to decide as it took you to decide what to watch tonight. But something was wrong. If the United States was launching a first strike, why only 5 missiles? Petrov understood American nuclear doctrine. A genuine first strike wouldn't be 5 missiles. It would be hundreds. The ground-based radar systems, which were designed to provide secondary confirmation, showed nothing. He picked up the phone, and he told his superiors it was a false alarm. He was right. The Soviet early warning satellite had experienced a critical malfunction. A rare alignment of sunlight reflecting off high-altitude cloud formations had been interpreted by the system as 5 separate missile launches. If Petrov had followed protocol, the Soviet Union would have launched a retaliatory nuclear strike. The United States would have responded in kind, and you would not be watching this video. The Soviet Union classified the incident for 15 years. When the story finally came out in 1998, Petrov received some recognition. A World Citizen Award, an award ceremony in New York, a crystal trophy. He returned to his small apartment outside Moscow. His wife had died. He had little money. He grew vegetables in his garden. He gave interviews occasionally when journalists managed to find him. He said he did not consider himself a hero. He said he was just doing his job. Stanislav Petrov died on May 19, 2017. His death wasn't reported until September of that year, when a German journalist called his apartment to congratulate him on another award, and Petrov's son answered the phone. The man who saved the world died alone. A ship whose architecture killed the poor, systematically, without a single villain. A plague that never ended, and that an entire government conspired to hide from its own citizens. Bodies frozen in poses of agony that science proved were beyond feeling anything at all. A shadow burned into stone, and a man who survived what survival made impossible. Twice. And one officer in an underground bunker who had 20 minutes to decide the fate of everything, and chose correctly. The official version of history is almost always cleaner than the truth. More comfortable, more containable, easier to print in a textbook. But the real version tells you something true about power and class, and what governments choose to conceal, and what one human being in the right moment can do. If there's a story you think deserves to be on this channel, leave it in the comments. World Factum posts every week. The history they didn't teach you is exactly what we're here for.